In this video, I'm going to be covering the military strength of the Seven Kingdoms around the year 297 or early 298 AC. So let's start with the Crown Lands. The city of King's Landing is manned by a city watch that is about 2,000 men strong. These are veterans and grizzled officers whose main job is to keep order during peacetime. The environs around King's Landing can provide about 10 to 15,000 soldiers at the behest of the lords of Duskendale, Rosby, and others. King's Landing also has about 50 ships of the fleet, including King Robert's hammer, which dips 50 oars. The Isle of Dragonstone can bring forth a small force of perhaps 3,000 men at arms and knights, 400 of whom would be mounted. Dragonstone's true power is in the fleet, which supports the bulk of the royal fleet. Dragonstone floats 160 ships, 80 of which are full galleys that dip 100 or more oars. Next, we have the North. The Starks command perhaps 45,000 fighting men. Since the region is so large and has such a diffuse population, however, it takes a very long time to gather an army. Because of this, Robb Stark was only able to go south with about 20,000 swords. Since the winters are so harsh, the local lords are always concerned with having enough men to bring in the harvest. Sending away needed workers means a cold, hungry death for everyone in the area. Though Robb Stark only assembled 20,000 men, the Umbers and others complained of not having enough men for the harvest. Had Robb marshaled his forces in the height of summer, he could probably have gathered another 10,000 men easily. Among the forces of the North, the average ratio between foot and horse soldier is about 4 to 1. The Northerners have no fleet to speak of since Brandon the Burner torched the navy. Next, we have the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands can call upon an estimated 20,000 swords. The island fleet is the largest in Westeros, greater than the royal fleet, and far larger than nearly every other navy. The islands can probably float about 500 longships or more. Many of these might dip no more than 20 oars, while a handful dip more than 100. The Iron Fleet is a specific elite fleet of these larger ships. It should be noted that a longship does not compare well to a galley or a carrack, despite being faster and more maneuverable, as those ships have much higher decks with room to mount scorpions and other such instruments of war. The Ironmen have an advantage over other regions for their martial culture encompasses everyone high and low, men and even some women, of all whom learn to fight and reeve. Next, we have the Riverlands. The strength of the Riverlands is roughly 45,000 swords, likely comparable to that of the Vale of Arryn. Unfortunately, the strong personalities of the River Lords leads to fractious divisions. The Freys like to sit and wait, and they command some 4,000 by themselves. The Lords of Bracken and Blackwoods are at odds, helping to paralyze the region. The ratio of foot to horse is likely fairly high at about 3 to 1, and houses on the major rivers will have barges, galleys, and skiffs. The Vale. The defenders of the Vale can summon perhaps 45,000 swords to their banners. Their force is comparable in power to the North or Dorne, although far more concentrated than the former. They have little naval power to speak of outside of Gultown, but have a decent ratio of infantry to mounted soldiers. The Westerlands. The Westerlands command slightly more troops than places like the Riverlands or the Vale. It is estimated that the entirety of the Westerlands can bring in 50,000 soldiers when all the banners are raised, but this includes the greenest boys and leaves many castle garrisons desperately weak. The Lannisters' wealth allows them to command the second strongest land force, in large part because it allows them to field a tremendous mounted force. Lord Tywin and Sir Jaime's armies both had a very high percentage of mounted soldiers to foot, perhaps slightly better than 2 to 1. The pikemen of the City Watch and Lannisport are known to be well trained, perhaps the most disciplined foot levy in the Seven Kingdoms. The Lannisters also have a fairly significant naval strength, now that they've recovered from the burning of the fleet of Lannisport during the Greyjoys' rebellion. The Lannisters have 20 or 30 cogs, carracks, galleys, and dromons at Lannisport, and can call upon their bannermen to fill out their fleets. Each minor coastal house likely has 2 or 3 ships to patrol their waters. In total, the Westerland Navy is probably close to 50 or 60 large ships, leaving their longships for coastal defense. The Reach. Because of its bountiful harvest and its wealth, the Reach has a large population. With that comes the largest army in the Seven Kingdoms, capable of reaching 80,000 troops, with a foot to horse ratio of 2 or 3 to 1. Should the sweepings of the Reach be collected and trained, they might marshal as many as 100,000 swords. With the Red Wines, Shield Islands, and the coastal lords gathered together, the Tyrells also command a fleet to rival the King's royal fleet and the fleet of the Greyjoys, floating 200 ships or more. The Stormlands. The Baratheons of Storm's End command the most formidable castles in the Seven Kingdoms, but their arms are fewer than those of some of the richer regions. The lords of the Stormlands can raise perhaps 30,000 men to fight. However, there's likely a poor horse to foot ratio. Individual soldiers are often seasoned veterans due to the strong martial traditions in the marches, and the marcher lords tend to have very strong castles to resist Dornish raids. And finally, we have Dorne. The spearmen of Dorne number about 50,000. They favor spears and lighter armors due to Rhoynish influences and the heat of the country. The Dornishmen are famous for their sand steeds, like coursers that can outrun any other horse of the Seven Kingdoms. They tend to ready large numbers of mounted soldiers. The Dornishmen are experts at using terrain to their benefit. Already dangerous fighters, they become almost unbeatable when fighting in their mountain passes or across the hot deserts. They favor guerrilla tactics, light, quick assaults, and hasty retreats that favor their horses and spearmen. Dorne has few ships, certainly fewer than the Reach or the Westerlands. So there you have it. That is the military strength of the Seven Kingdoms. Of course, some of it can be debated. George Martin actually came out and said that he agrees with a lot of those. So that's probably about the closest we are going to get to accuracy. Which kingdom do you think would be the strongest? Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.